You follow? All right, so now, but back then, all right, Esau was into the height of his wisdom and understanding. He was coming into the height of it, where he's the hunter. He discerns, he hunts people. So he could see, you understand, this acrimony, this jealousy in Ptolemy. So therefore, he started working on Ptolemy and got Ptolemy to come with him into this plot to get rid of Alexander for different reasons, but nevertheless, they had to get rid of Alexander. In 322 BCE, they did that. Alexander was poisoned, he died, and then Ptolemy was the first one of the Diadochi, or his generals, to claim a portion of his kingdom, and that was Egypt and surrounding areas, okay? And that's the prophecy, that 4 of these generals would rise up. His kingdom would be split into 4 sections, and 2 of these generals would be stronger than the other 2. The 2 strongest ones, and that's what the book is dealing with, and that's what we're dealing with, was Ptolemy in Egypt in 320 BCE, and then later on in 283 BCE, Antiochus Seleucus set up his dynasty in Syria. The king of the north in Syria, the king of the south in Egypt. Okay, now that's Ptolemy's in Egypt, as the Seleucids up in Syria. All right, at the outset, the Ptolemies were the strongest for the first hundreds or so years, okay? So until like around 200 BCE and a little bit past that, okay? You understand, around 190, 180 BC, the Ptolemies were the strongest. But so therefore, by them being the strongest, they controlled the Holy Land. And that's where you go into this history here, and you start to see that these different books, these apocryphal books, the Septuagint in 280 BCE, you understand, under Ptolemy Philadelphus, the son of Ptolemy Soter. That's when they went in and started to translate this book of remembrance into Greek. All right, and it was the Edomites that did it under Ptolemy Philadelphus. All right, it wasn't our forefathers. You understand? You got to remember that Israel went into captivity and was under the dominion of other people because we were running away from Yah, not running to Yah. All right? Now, the descendants of Esau, as I started this show out with, chapter 11, verse 14, Daniel. In these days, these times, the robbers of thy people shall exalt themselves to establish the vision. Okay? And this is when we see the descendants of Esau coming into view. You follow me? Starting calling themselves Israel themselves, as it tells you in history. Jews. That's the key word. Jews, okay? When you see that historically, it's not talking about Israel. It's talking about the descendants of Esau. The Maccabees, Edomites. All right? Not Israel. Edomites. Now, as we get into some of this history here, we're going to see here, and this is coming out of Pictorial Bible Dictionary, and it says the Septuagint, the first and most important of a number of ancient translations of the Hebrew Old Testament into Greek. Okay, little is certainly known about it. See, little is certainly known about it, for our information is frequently based on ancient traditions. Anytime it says traditions, that means it's word of mouth. Everybody knows how word of mouth goes. You can't, I can't say something to Mark and Mark can take it to the next person exactly as I said to him, because it's going to change. That's tradition, okay? So therefore, things has changed constantly from one person to the next. All right? Based on ancient traditions of doubtful authenticity. Okay? And scholars are divided in their judgments both concerning its origin and its usefulness in textual criticism. Okay? So it says, you understand, what is the truth of this story? It is generally agreed that the Pentateuch, the law, was translated from Hebrew into Greek in Egypt at about the time of Ptolemy II, that's Ptolemy Philadelphus, around 280 BC, they say here. The rest of the Old Testament was done at a later date. See, they don't give you the time, they just say a later date. All right? Most scholars believe, okay, the whole to have been finished by 180 BC, that's 100 years later. Okay, we right down there at the time of the Maccabees, these Edomites, you follow me, rising up, trying to establish the vision. Okay, although some scholars some scholars disagree and believe that the 70, the Septuagint, never contained more than the Pentateuch, the law, until the Christians took it over and added the rest of the Old Testament books much later. Okay? So therefore it says, it seems most likely that the 70 originated not by the desire of Ptolemy II. See, not by the desire of Ptolemy II. Although the project may have had his approval, but out of the need of the Alexandrian Jews. So these are the Edomites who were in Egypt with Ptolemy. The Alexandrian Jews, Alexandria, Egypt. Okay? Alexandria of the 3rd century BC, see, 200s, right? Was a large city with a great Jewish population, Edomite population. All right? It says these Jews were Greek speaking, having long since forgotten their own language. Now remember now, you understand, in the Medo-Persian situation, when they had to flee, the Edomites had to flee because the death knell had fell upon their head, the same death knell they tried to exterminate the children of Israel with. They fled over into Grecia, the ones that were able. And so now, what does it say here? Who had long since forgotten their language, because they had been over in Grecia. Okay? Yeah, they'd been over in Grecia for you know what, close to 2 centuries. So they were speaking Greek. You follow? So it says here, the vigorous Jewish intellectual life of Alexandria, okay, would demand the Torah in Greek, just as earlier generation of Jews made targums of the Old Testament Aramaic language. Okay? Okay, says the fact that the 70 was not made all at once is plain by the unevenness of its character. Okay, so they can see that from the textual, you understand, content. It wasn't even. You know, it's out of text. And it's not consistent. Says the 70 came to have great authority among the non-Palestinian Jews. Okay, non-Palestinian Jews, you know, Palestine, Jerusalem. Says its use in the synagogues of the diaspora made it one of the most important missionary aids. Okay, okay. See, these are the Edomites, you understand, in dealing with it. Then it says here, the early Christian church, built largely on converts from the synagogues of the Greek-speaking world, took over the 70 as their Bible. Their use of it to prove to the Jews that Jesus was the Messiah caused a change in Jews' attitude towards it. Soon after 100 AD, the Jews completely gave up the 70 and it became a Christian book. Okay, so you understand, we can see, you understand, that they started changing and putting and implanting things in there. Now, you know, it's so much, we can't, from time constraints, we can't read all of this. But when you go in parts of history, you will see that, for instance, Christianity, okay, they don't give you a date on its, you know, its, its advent. They won't give you a date, and you know why, okay? But again, they'll just say, just to read a little bit here, Christianity, this is early Christianity. This is out the Columbia Encyclopedia. Christianity is in a direct sense an offshoot of Judaism. So right there it's telling you Judaism preceded Christianity. All right? And this is Judaism, what we've been talking about. This is when the Edomites, the Jews, started, as it says in 11:14 Daniel, started to exalt themselves to establish the vision. This is in the 3rd century. You know, they started reading the book in the latter part of the 4th century BCE with the advent of Ptolemy. So that's like 320 BCE. Okay, when you get down into the 3rd century BCE, as we just read, 280, 285, under Ptolemy Philadelphus, Ptolemy Soter's son, now they starting to translate the book into Greek. All right, and they're scrutinizing it. Okay, they want to know all about this book. You understand? Now, it says this Christianity is a direct offshoot of Judaism. So Judaism preceded Christianity, because again, Christianity didn't come on the scene till sometime in the 4th kingdom of man, which we've talked about previously. Not at the time they usually say. Okay, it had to come on after Simon Bar Kokhba, after 135 CE AD.